Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening from whichever time zone you may be calling us in from today. We thank you for joining. My name is Rebecca Cronin, and I'm one of the customer success managers here with the Altair Data Analytics team. Now, some of you might recognize my voice or my name from either participating in our onboarding sessions or perhaps seeing my name within the user community with some of the different blog posts and comments. The customer success team, we're here as another point of contact for you to reach out at any time with any questions, concerns you may have regarding Altair or our solutions, as well as if you're unable to get a hold of your account manager. We also can provide assistance in receiving access to our online user community, as well as to our Altair One portal. Now, if you've not participated in the community, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a great opportunity to collaborate with fellow peers, kind of review some of the questions they have. It's an opportunity for you to answer or even post your own. And a little housekeeping. On your control panel on the side, you should see a little handout section. It's a copy of today's PowerPoint that you can download. And within the PowerPoint, there's some helpful web links for different resources available. So again, we're very excited for you to join us today for our Ask the Expert series. Our goal is to be able to help answer some of these questions, how to perform some functionality within Monarch or Monarch Server. And after presenting our topic that was voted by the peers, we then have open Q&A. The questions that you submit to us do not have to be about today's topic. It could be about anything that you have, all things Monarch. So you'll also see in that side control panel is a question section where you'll be able to enter your question. Now, if it's something you want to be addressed offline in private, please make that comment to be shared offline. Otherwise, we'll share it with everyone that's in attendance today. And if we don't get a chance to get to your question, we'll do our best to get back to you privately. So now I'd like to introduce you to our expert today. It's Chris Porthouse. He's one of our senior professional service consultants. He's worked over 21 years with various technical support roles, of course, within Altair, about 15 plus years. He started off as a project manager, switched over his role to implementation and integration engineer to his current role of a senior professional service consultant. He's provided tremendous assistance to both our customers on and off site, as well as perhaps answer questions in the forum, or you or your organization may have worked with him directly. So with no further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Chris. Today, as I mentioned, our topic is reviewing pivot and unpivot within Monarch. So let me make Chris presenter. Here we go. Did that work, Chris? Are you presenting now?
It did not.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, thank you. 1 second here. There you go. You should see my...
I see Monarch.
Yep, okay, perfect. All right, yeah, so as Rebecca mentioned, we're going to be talking about pivot and unpivot tables today. So I do have a sample data set dealing with, I forgot where I found this one, but basically like the salary within the data science industry, I guess the best way of putting it. So I'm just going to bring in a CSV file just so we can play with it a little bit. So I'm just going to use the drag and drop method. So since it is a CSV file, Data Prep Studio actually recognizes it and will automatically load based off the data within it. So right away, the first thing notice, again, this is like a global salary index in 2024 for data science roles like AI, ML, and other data science jobs. But we can see, just looking at the data, we see like, the year, some data was reported. It's hard to look at some of the statistics for this data. I can see that, it basically goes from 2020 up to 2023. There's a what we call an experience level based off of I guess, the experience level. So like the SE would be a senior level, the EN, or I'm sorry, the MI is a mid-level. I think there's an EN in here, which is entry, and an EX for executive. So we can kind of clean that up a little bit, just make it a little bit slightly more clear. But we have experience level of the year, was it full or part-time employment? What was the job title? And then we have the salary. It could be based, this salary, this column right here is based off of whatever currency is in the next column over. And someone actually normalized it a little bit. So they kind of converted all the salaries over into US dollars. So we're most likely going to be looking at this column in particular. So ideally, so when we were talking about the pivot and unpivot tables, like why would we use these? So basically, pivot tables are a nice way of restructuring or summarizing complex data sets into a table that will allow us to easily find patterns or solutions to any questions we might have about the data set. So basically, we're just kind of grouping together different variables within here, or just come up with different aggregations that will kind of help us see any kind of patterns that might emerge. So in this case, I do have this data set, so almost 14,000 rows. So I can kind of see that down here at the bottom, 14,000 rows of reported information. And again, there's multiple ways of doing stuff within Monarch, but in this case, rather than using the Analyze tab, I'm just going to kind of quickly put together a quick table by using our pivot and unpivot transformations. So if you are familiar with data prep, the first thing you do when you bring in data, you end up on this Prepare tab. Again, because this was a CSV file, everything was already in rows and columns to begin with, so I didn't have to come up and create any kind of models, extraction templates to actually put the data into rows and columns. It was already in there. So there's not a whole lot I can do on this table right here. Possibly I might just make it, since the pivot and unpivot is kind of a short topic, I'm just going to add just a quick little thing, because I honestly can't remember like these SEs and MIs. It just, my brain doesn't kind of shift that fast. I'm just going to add another column here just to further clarify as to what this experience level shows. So I'm going to create a quick column. Basically, I'm going to use a lookup column here. Basically, I'm just going to convert whatever the SEs, the MIs, the ENs into an actual name that makes more sense. So I'm just going to call this level. And I am going to import based off that field here, this experience level. So I import that. It's going to bring in all the unique values. So SE, MI, EN, EX. So the SE is a senior level position. So I'm just going to say senior. The MI is more like a junior or mid-level position. The EN is going to be entry. And the EX is going to be executive. Right. So basically what this lookup column is going to do is just basically, if I see SE, it's going to substitute for senior. So now I can kind of put a pivot table together, maybe by splitting out, putting in different columns. Like if I take this information here, I can put this as all the unique values in this column, in this column to individual columns going across. So if I look at the transform tab here, you'll see we have 7 different kinds of transform. Today we're going to talk about pivot and unpivot. And when you look at the quick help for pivot, it just says pivot row values to new columns. So basically what we're going to do here, and you can do this on more than one column. I usually don't recommend it. It's a little bit cleaner to keep it to one column on the pivot. But basically what's going to do is whatever column you just decide to pivot on, it's going to pull in all the unique values of that column. So in this case, our level here, again, if I just look at statistics real quick, we can see all the unique values. So senior, mid, entry, and executive. So if I pivot on this column, I should end up with a new data set that will show at least 4 columns. We'll show 4 new columns, each one with the column header of senior, mid, entry, and executive. And then we can actually, depending on how we group the data together, will also determine how many other columns we'll have. So if you have at least one group, so we'll have these 4 columns plus a grouping level. If we have 2 groups, we'll have a total of 6 columns. But the idea, this whole idea of the pivot, is for each of these columns that gets created in whatever group level we set to, we can put in some different aggregations that will summarize the data for us, whether it's like you're adding up the total salary, or you want the average salary, or you're counting the number of positions within that year in that job title. So let's quickly just jump into it. So I'm going to select this under the Transform tab. I'm going to select Pivot. And already decided I want to, basically I want to get the average salary for each job title. So here's our different job titles, and there are quite a few of them in here. So I can see there is, where is it? 146 unique values for different job titles. So I probably wouldn't want to pivot on this one just because it'll create 146 columns. But there's 146 different data science jobs that have been reported to whatever global industry there is. So I'm going to go Transform Pivot. But I want to find out for each of those job titles, based off of year, group it by year and the job title, and I just want to get the average salary for each experience level. So since I want to pivot on the experience level, again, I could choose either experience level or the actual level this column I just created called level, so I'm going to use that. But so I have to, it says select the pivot column by clicking on the pivot icons. So if we look down here, these are the available columns that you have, or these are the columns that are available to you to choose from. There's a select all checkbox up here, or individual select box here. You also see a pivot column, a group column, and then this is the data type and the names. But so it's telling you to choose the pivot icon. So basically looking at this column right here. And I want to pivot off the level. So whatever unique values are within this level column will now be column headers themselves. So I'm going to select the pivot icon, and I'll basically move it from down here to the available columns up here into our pivot here. Again, you can choose more than one. I'm just going to leave just level as my only pivot column. And then this is optional. You can how you want to group it. Now, again, I don't want to see all 13, almost 14,000 rows in here. So I'm going to kind of group it to summarize it, so I don't have to look at everything. And I'm going to put two group levels in here. I want to group it by the work year as well as the job title. So to choose a group level here, again, just it tells you select those columns by clicking on the key icon. So here's our pivot column, and here's our key icon under the group level. So I want to group by work year. Again, notice it moves it from down here up under the group section, and then I want to do by group by job title. As you can see, if I move this out of the way here, like we'll see like data engineer here listed 3 times, and that corresponds to what was that? Different data points have been submitted. So data engineer, like as you can see in these 3 rows here in 2024, these are all senior level positions, and these are the 3 different salaries reported. So, and then once you have the column you want to pivot on, how you want to group it by, the next is how you would like to summarize or aggregate the information. So what's left here is the columns that you can choose from. Now, speaking for if you have a text data type, so where you see this AB, it's going to have different aggregation options here. So if I select this checkbox, and you can see from the dropdown, for text fields, you're kind of limited to how many times does it occur, so the count, or you can put the first time you see that value or the last time you see it. So for text fields, you only have those 3 options, but for numeric fields, you actually have, I'm going to use salary in US dollars because it's been normalized. You can see if I use a drop down here, you have quite a few different ones. So we do have count, but we do have first and last, but in addition to those, we have the count, the sum, count not empty, average, anything like that. So you can choose multiples of these, and actually I'm going to leave it 1 for now, and I'm actually more curious about the average salary for each position, for each title and experience level. And I'm going to just leave the 1 now just so I can talk about these options up here in a second. But I'm going to choose average, and I think I'm just going to leave just the 1, and I'm going to say okay. When I do that, you'll see our initial table called salaries is now a child or descendant of this pivot table up here. But what you can see is going across the top, I see the 2 columns I use for grouping, so by work year and job title, and I see the actual 4 unique values that were listed for the different experience levels, so senior, mid, entry, and executive. And then from here, I can just kind of keep working with data prep, trying to prepare how I want this data to be laid out. So maybe I don't like this order here. I want to put it more in like what I would expect to see. So So starting at the entry level to the junior to the senior to the executive position. So for instance, like in 2020 for AI scientists, they're all entry level positions. So there were no one reported anything for the junior, mid-level, senior, executive position. And then again, 2020, there was a data engineer. There was actually 4 levels for that. I'm just going to kind of clean this up a little bit, just so it kind of gives like the numbers look a little bit more clean. The format is called currency, and that way I can kind of see what's going on here. So I mean, I can actually see right away. To me, it just seems odd that for data engineer back in 2020, the entry level position was 48. I would actually expect to see these salaries increase as you build up more experience level. But I can see for the mid or junior level, it's at 94,000. But the higher you go, you actually make less, which to me seems odd. Maybe I'd have to go dig into why is that. But again, this gives me a quick visual indicator of like, hey, I can quickly summarize my data and see how it looks. Now, the one thing I will stress, when you group, so the group level is kind of when you're grouping the pivot tables, you'll notice it went by work year and then job title. Now, again, I could always use another transform up here or within the drop-down menu and sort this based off a better way. But when you're actually grouping with the pivot table, I'll give you a second here, bring that up. The grouping doesn't matter which order you do the grouping in, it's always going to take the order of how the columns are laid out in the underlying table. So for instance, if I ungroup by work year and just leave job title, like it's going to group everything by just the job title, but not the year. If I go back and edit this pivot table and say, not only do I want to see the job title, but I want to break it down by the work year second. So you'll see I have job title first, work year second. I'll say, okay. Notice that the work year, it didn't necessarily follow the way I expected it to, where it would put AI scientist and then list the 2020 through 2024. It actually grouped on work year first. Well, the reason it does that is because if I look at my underlying table, work year actually comes before job title. So again, this all depends on how you want your data to lay out, but if I look here at my edit pivot, I don't have the option of changing the sort order per se here. Like up here under the pivot, if I had more than one column, I can change how that's done. But for grouping, you don't have that option down here. So if I did want job title to be my highest level group first, I actually have to change the table underneath here. So if I come job title, if I move this over to here, it should go back to pivot. Now I notice that the job title comes first and then the work year. So now I can see for AI architect, now it actually sorts 2023, 2024. Again, we can't change the sort order as well, so it's going to be ascending all the time. But again, we could always use the transform or sort option here to change the order that it shows up in. All right. And then the other thing to point out with the pivots, let me go back into edit here, is I mentioned I only had one here, like I just chose average. And if you look at our column titles here, so job title, work year, pretty much it keeps whatever the unique value is. If you wanted to add more than one aggregate here, not a problem. Like say I have my average salary, maybe I want the total salary as well. I'll even include how many positions have been reported for that. So I'll include the sum, count, and average. Click OK. Oops, let me go back here real quick. Notice what, as soon as I add more than one aggregate, even though this box up here, let's clear this out here. This is how it looked, this disable column suffix. As soon as you add more than one aggregate, this disable column suffix is grayed out and is basically disabled. This column suffix, and click OK here, is pretty much what you see up here at the top. So not only do I see I see the actual level, senior, mid, entry, or whatever, but now it actually includes more information to tell you what that value is in this column. So in this case, for this first one right here, this AI architect in 2023, this number actually represents the average of the salary in US dollars. And then again, it will just kind of repeat that first aggregate, the average that we had in here. So for each pivot value. So senior, mid, entry, executive, the average salary. If I scroll more to the right here, now you can see instead of average, now we're looking at the sum. So it'll put the column suffix, it will put the aggregate and then the pivot value in here. So kind of starts, as you start adding more pivot columns and more aggregates, it kind of makes the data wider essentially. So we have our sum salary, and if I scroll more to the right, we should get our count for each pivot level, or pivot value. So how many times was for this value was 11, for mid, entry, and executive. Well, executive had 1. So, but again, that's how I usually like to keep it to one aggregate here. Again, we can play with it some more, or if you really need to get these different values, it might be easier to use the Analyze tab, but this just allows you to quickly put this, play with the data here. I'm just going to just kind of take this out again. And actually, before I do that, notice also as well, because I made that change here, a lot of if you look at my change list here, it's pretty much all grayed out because it can't find that senior column anymore, because that senior column no longer exists. It was called senior average salary in US dollar column. So be aware that if you do make a change, once you have a pivot, you might invalidate some of your changes over here by adding a different, actually adding an aggregate. Now, if I actually uncheck these, notice that this box is now enabled, but it doesn't automatically select it. So if I say OK to here, it's still going to have those column suffix on here. So if you do want to resort back, make sure you just come up here and select this checkbox. Okay. And that should fix all my changes, which it does. All right. Let's see here.
So Chris, we did have 2 questions that came in.
Sure.
So I'll do kind of the easier one. It says, can you please show the statistics again? Oh,
sure. Yeah, so the statistics is really nice in data prep here. So Monarch doesn't quite have it, but it just will allow, it basically summarizes whatever column you're looking at. So for instance, we looked at job title, right? So if I use the drop-down arrow here, and every column will have this option available, whether it's text or numeric or date field. But if you come down to statistics and just select the show statistics, it'll basically summarize, depending on what the data type is. In this case, it's a text field. So it's going to essentially display all of the unique values in here. Not only will it display the unique values, but it'll tell you how many times it occurs. By default, it uses count descending, so you can change how it's ordered. Go from lowest to highest, lowest to highest, lowest, value. So, basic alphabetical or whatever it is, and just get an idea. It puts this like little histogram kind of thing going over here. In addition to what you see here, the graphical view of it, we do give you like a text base of it. So a lot of times it's useful. It's like, if you want to know, it's like, am I missing any data? So basically, are there any null values? Ideally, like I can see down here at the bottom, I have 13,972 rows. It tells you right here. So I have no rows with a null value. I do have, I did find 13,972 rows. Out of that, none of them contained a null value. How many were blank? Because blanks and nulls are 2 different values. For a text field, it's actually telling me like the smallest length of the string for that this job title was 9. The largest was 40. And then just a couple other interesting statistics. Which word occurred most frequently? Data. And again, it also tells you how many unique values, so 146 here. So it's kind of nice. Like I said, you can do this on any of the columns here. If I do look at a numeric field, this text work year, statistics, show statistics. Now I can only show one at a time. So if I go back, actually, I think if I go back, yeah. No matter if I change the columns, it's only going to show me one column at a time. And so, but yeah. Yeah, statistics is very useful sometimes to get an idea of what the data looks like as well. Again, like if I looked at the salary, I could have almost done the same thing. Show statistics. It'll actually give the total amount of salary as well as a mean value, min, max, and how many unique salary counts are in here. So, but Yeah, so that's statistics. And again, it's available anywhere. You have this, essentially anywhere you have this drop-down arrow within the Prepare tab. So even though I pivoted my data, I can now look at my entry and say, all right, show me statistics on this column here. And it'll kind of go through the exact same thing. So yeah, great. And then when you're done looking at it, click this Hide Statistics to get your screen real estate back. But yeah, I enjoy this, the statistics button. It gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on. Again, at that time I had 14,000 rows. It might not be that bad to scroll through, but when you have millions of rows, if you're looking for something that's missing, quick way of doing that. Okay. What was the next other? Because I only saw that question, but what's the next?
So the other question, I think I'm not quite sure, but it goes, it would be nice if you did not need to click on the field to enter the senior level. Tab or enter and then type. No click to enter data. So I think it's when you're making the lookup. It might be, maybe it's a feature request.
Yeah, okay, I see it now. Just give me 1 second to try
when you did the lookup. Remember how we went back to on your main table?
Yeah, it could be, because it is. I agree. I think that I have that complaint as well. Like when you're actually creating it. Yeah. So actually, let's do a different one. Let's see. We'll do the employment type, for instance. If this is what they're asking, column, new lookup column, import. Yeah. So if I click here, I actually have to double click. It won't actually start typing. And it would actually be nice if, like if you tab over, you could start typing, but you can't. You have to hit like F2 or double click in there to start typing. But if that's what they're asking, I
so it's more. I think that's what it was. It was a feature request.
I agree. I'm on the same page as them.
We'll try to send that into to development.
Yeah, because like it would be nice if you could just start typing and it would just go in, and it doesn't. So
yeah.
But if you're looking for a keyboard shortcut, it's F2. Will allow you to start editing that field. So
F2 for a shortcut.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep, I'm with you.
Yep. So we'll submit it. I'm sure Chris has done as well.
Yeah, I'm not a mouse person. I like keyboards, and it's just quicker. And then having to use that mouse just slows down what you're working on. So.
Right. We have another question that came in.
Okay.
It is it possible to have nested pivots that will look as drop downs in Excel export?
I want to say the answer is no, because we don't do the drop down kind of thing. And that's almost like I want to say you can almost do the exact same thing with the analyze. Again, you can include multiple pivots in here. So like if I did the entry and then say we did the employment type, I think was the other one. So I could include that, but it won't be a drop down. It'll just actually add, again, like senior, full-time, mid full-time. It just adds more columns to it, so there's no real drop down. And even if you use the Analyze tab, you kind of get drop down, so it's more like you actually have to select the pivot you're looking on, the measure you're looking at. I want to say so the short answer I want to say is no, unless someone else has a different response. But yeah, I don't really play with Excel pivots all that much, but I have an idea of what you're talking about, and I don't believe we quite do it that way.
And then it was a continued. It said also the same question for nested grouping.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it'd be nice to have drop downs, but they don't really have it here.
So it sounds like another feature request.
Feature request.
So
yep.
By the way, feature request, if you go to the community, you open a support ticket, there is the option called feature request. So type in that comment, submit it in. Support will then escalate it to development. And perhaps as more folks internally see it, we could also vote up the idea. So great feedback. Thank you.
All right. And there we go. It's having a hard time popping up the question so I can see the whole thing. All right. Cool. All right. So that's pivot. So the other flip side of pivot is the unpivot. Basically, we're just going to kind of roll back what we just have done. Now, I'll quickly run through it, but ideally what's going to happen is you're going to take, like we took, we basically the average, I think this was the average one for the different job levels, experience levels, for the different titles and the work year and everything like that. So what an unpivot will do, instead of taking the actual row values and converting them into columns, it's going to take your column values and convert them into rows. It's actually going to do it in a key value kind of pairing. So ideally, like we took the unique values for the experience level and made new columns, so the entry through executive. Now, if I want to take these columns and convert them back to rows, what's going to happen is I'll create for each of these rows here, or for each row that has a value. So like in this case, entry and mid don't have anything, so I won't create rows for missing values, but I'll create 2 new rows for AI Architect in 2023. Basically, it'll create 2 new columns called attribute and value. The attribute is going to be the actual column name. So in this case, senior. So we'll have a row with an attribute value of senior and the value column of whatever the value is under there. So again, probably just easier to show. So I'm just going to use the transform tab here. Instead of doing pivot, we're going to use unpivot. And again, you don't necessarily have to unpivot all of them, but it's just going to make it cleaner if I unpivot all the unique values that we just had. So like our entry, mid, senior, and executive. So to unpivot, it tells you the wizard's going to tell you what to do. Just select the icons here, the key icon. So under here in the unpivot column, the key icon. So I want to unpivot the entry field, the mid field, the senior field, and the executive field. Now, if I just do that, it will do it, but it won't necessarily include the other columns I need to have here. So I'm going to use select all, so I still maintain my job title and work year. So if we can remember, AI Architect had 2 values for 2023, senior and executive, so 253,000 and 215,000. Click OK, and let it work its magic. So AI Architect for 2023, we have our senior and executive, 253 and 215,000 dollars. So, and again, it won't necessarily contain, like we had missing or null values here. It won't pivot those out as well. We'll just skip over. And again, because this was a transformation, my pivot table is now a child or descendant of my unpivot table up here. But we can see for each, we maintained our 2 columns here, our job title and work year, and create 2 new columns called attribute and value. So in this case, entry and actually, go back to the first row here, senior and 253,000. The attribute column is going to be whatever the column name was. So in this case, senior or executive. And the value column is whatever that value is for that. Basically, it's like a cross tabbing, right? So if I look for the senior column for AI Architect in 2023, I'm going to stick this value in here. And that's what I see up here. So AI Architect 2023 senior 253,000 and change. Again, this is average values. So the unpivot just kind of undoes what a pivot table will, what we did with the pivot, we just kind of roll that back. So and just so you can see, you don't necessarily have to unpivot all this stuff. It just gets a little weird when you don't. So if I just do the entry level, it's, here's all my entry, and then for here, but it's essentially almost the exact same table as before, but I just created a column called attribute, and that value is going to be entry, and then the value of there. So again, by just doing this one, it doesn't make any sense why C here for the most part, but and the same thing, just add those back in, just so you can see the weirdness of it. Say okay to this. If I don't include anything, the job title or senior or the work year, it's just basically going to break out. It's going to unpivot those experience levels and the values. Again, it doesn't really tie back to anything, so you can't see what's going on here. But it did exactly what I told it. It did what I told it to do. Just unpivot, but don't necessarily tie it back to anything. So if I at least put job title, it makes slightly more sense. But when you start seeing stuff like, so you see AI Architect Senior, but the 2 different values, you're not sure what those go to. Again, that's because I didn't include the work year in here as well. So, but I see another question came in. Let's see, where's it at?
Yep. The question was, in the Analyze tab on Summaries, is it possible to have numeric columns calculate on other columns? For instance, I have two numeric columns, 2022 and 2023. I want to have each column do an average. I know this could be done, and then the new calculation column that takes the difference between them.
All right, so
the workaround that they've been doing is the calculation column in the Prepare tab. So when you're here.
All right, so if I'm on the Analyze tab, is it possible to have a numeric column calculate on other columns? So they have two columns, 2022 and 2023. You want to have each column do an average. Yeah, actually, let me see if I understand correct.
But that would be in the summary, though?
Yeah. But it says in the Analyze tab.
Right, we're in Analyze, but then like if you make a new summary.
Yeah, so let's create the summary here. I'm just going to use the base table of salaries. And try to kind of see. So job title will be a row. And then the column would be the year, like 2022, 2023. So I would say you could actually probably, well, I have to use, I can't just choose those two columns. It would choose the whole thing. So I create the work year as a column, and then the measure, let's see, it was going to be like, we'll say salary again. Salary in US dollars is going to be a measure. Instead of doing a sum, say we do average, I think should essentially get you what hopefully that's what you're looking for. Now it'll put each year going across because, and I think we can also clean that up a little bit by filtering it down to only show specific things within what we're viewing. But this should give you the different years and columns for each one as an average. Now, if you're trying to show average and sum, that's going to be.
Right, because then it says, so you have that, but then it says in the new calculation column takes the difference between them.
Oh.
So in this case, we have 4 years.
But he's trying to calculate the difference between like.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You can't do it within here, just because Analyze won't let you do that. One option would be to export and bring it back in. But if you're looking for the difference, again, you could probably use a pivot to actually pivot on the values, and then you can actually do the calculation as a new field. Is that what it said?
So what they've been doing is like the workaround is that they in the Prepare tab. So they're probably, if you go to Prepare, it's just going to be the original. So I'm guessing they must.
Yeah, because I mean, if anything, I could pivot off the year, for instance, pivot and group by job title, and then salary, average, and I'll put all the years in here. Now I can actually create a calculated field to do the differences between each one.
Yeah, that would be the workaround, to use the pivot to do it here opposed to the summary section.
Yeah. But yeah, again, there's almost always one way to do something in data prep, just what you're kind of familiar with. But it looks like it says he answered our question, so hopefully that was helpful.
And then it looks like a follow-up. Subtract 1 year from another, but you would need to repeat back on the number of years.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're trying to find differences throughout the whole year, you're gonna have to create several different calculations.
Did that help answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay, looked like it did.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Great.
Yeah, also, I don't know if you quickly caught that. I was able to pivot, like, even though I did a pivot on this one salaries table, and I'm sure most people are going to be aware of it, but like So I did another transform on this salaries table, another pivot. It actually creates a whole brand new table. So I essentially duplicated my salaries table, and it does it on its own. So if you're transforming like a descendant or a sub table, child table, it's going to create, like, you can't kind of insert it in the middle of something you've already done, so it just kind of recreates everything up to that point. So just to be something to be aware of. And while we're not, and real quickly, because we have a few more minutes, just just to let everyone know, if you do make a mistake, you can kind of delete something, or like you don't want to do the unpivot, you want to undo it or something like that. Just be aware, and we kind of give you this visual indication now, but when data prep was first introduced, don't use this delete button, because as you can see, if I hover over delete, notice it's turning my unpivot, my pivot, and my salary table red. So I do delete, it's actually delete all 3 tables there. So if you do make a mistake, you don't want the unpivot, it's not delete, it's actually discard. So if I hover over the discard button, it'll essentially delete or discard that transformation. Whereas if you use delete, it's going to delete that table and all the children table below it. So just be aware. I mean, again, we give you that kind of indication that, hey, you might be doing something pretty bad here, but it will not, I mean, it'll give you, say, are you sure? And it'll tell you, and if you say yes, it's kind of, actually, I don't know if this will allow you to, I don't know if the undo works on this. I don't want to do it, so, but actually, we'll try it on this one.
I was going to say, how about clone it and then try it?
Yeah. I don't think the undo is not really available, except for the change list. So yeah. So if you do that, it's gone forever. So unless you saved and reload. So I don't see any other questions. Cool. Yeah. So that's pivot and unpivot. I mean, they're kind of nice to be aware of. They're not quite as powerful as Excel, but it does help to quickly allow you to do stuff on your data to get ideas of what's going on. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I'll just turn it back over to Rebecca.
Well, I think we got a couple more minutes. So again, does anyone have any question about any different other function? Right, we don't have to specifically answer the pivot or unpivot. We have about 15 minutes. We can, if you want to raise your hand, we can give you the mic if you want to ask it live, or if you just type it in that chat. Sure. So I see a hand raised, so I'm giving you the mic, Craig.
What's the difference between using analyzer versus using pivot? Because you're basically pivoting tables using analyzer.
Correct. So analyze is definitely more powerful. Way back, again, I think it's more of a history lesson when it came to data prep. When data prep was first introduced, we didn't have the concept of summaries or analyze, but we did have pivot, unpivot, and grouping. So it kind of just like more of a legacy thing at this point, that we still have those types of transformations in there. But I forget, I mean, it wasn't long after data prep was introduced that we brought analyze in there, but it was, but yeah, we didn't have analyze since the beginning. So I think that's more why they're both in there nowadays. But yeah, generally speaking, I would almost always use analyze. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do with the data. So if you still have to do other calculations, as we showed, it's like, if you can definitely use the analyze to create almost the exact same thing. But analyze also gives you the option to, like I said, if we had it in here, this one, I think, like you have the ability to actually do like subtotaling. So actually, I don't have it quite in here, but the experience level will include that as well. You can actually include subtotals in here. Like we have a grand total, right. This one, but yeah. So I don't know if I can do it with the layout here. Can I?
Hit layout.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I can actually do it with a column here. Yeah, but the analyze gives you the option to do subtotaling and stuff like that. So analyze is definitely more powerful, gives you more options. we also have coloring, so limits and coloring within Analyze. But to me, the pivot transform is just more of a quick summary, and if you're going to do any other kind of column calculations, so like you don't get that option here where you can like right click and say calculate something between these two columns if you wanted to. So
Chris, I just also want to add to this question. When you create an analyze, it's a snapshot of the table. So you cannot create another table based on analyze. But if you create a pivot table, then you can create another table on top of the pivot, and you can duplicate it. That's another difference between using analyze and pivot.
thanks, Mo. You can see it's like some of the formatting here is not the, again, I think there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done on the Analyze tab to deal with formatting. So
We had another question come in.
oh, all right.
Is there a row limitation in Monarch?
It's a loaded question. Technically, no. So you can bring in as many rows as you want. So when you talk about row limits, they're like, say you bring in like 1 billion rows, Monarch won't stop you. What will stop you is usually system resources. So depending on what's in your system, like memory, disk space, stuff like that, that could be a limitation. There's also like when you go to export, so like say if you're going to an Excel file, it's like was it like 1 million rows? If you have 1 billion rows, it's only going to export that million. So then you want to use like a CSV file or something like that. So technically, we don't limit the number of rows that come in. Again, if you have 1 trillion rows, it will let you do it. It might come to a crawl, and it might crash. But technically, we don't limit that. Again, if you do have a huge data set, and depending where the data set's coming from, you may not want to bring in all that data. So we recommend, I think, I can't remember if it's on by default now or not, but you can actually limit the number of rows that come in. There's a row limit feature here. So it allows you to, again, the default's like 100,000, but yeah, you can knock that down. So like, say if I make it 1,000, it'll load that data in to the first 1,000 rows. So it allows you to work in the prepare tab, do all the changes you need to do. And then once you're happy with what you have, when you go to the export option here, you go to export that data. It will actually give you the warning. We'll choose Excel here. I don't think it matters here. But you'll get to the thing at the bottom here. It says, hey, by the way, there's a row limit applied to your underlying table here. Do you want to export all the rows or the limited rows? Now, again, when you have a row limit in place and you're exporting limited rows, it's limited to the first X. So in this case, 1,000 rows. But even though I did 1,000, I limit it to 1,000 rows. So I say export all rows here. Let me just click export. I'll say export all rows. You can see it actually exports 1,000 or 13,972 rows. So just it's a nice feature to have. Again, if like say you're pulling from a database that has billions of rows, it might take a while to grab all that and bring it locally. But yeah, we don't necessarily enforce a limit. That's usually enforced by your system hardware and the output file format that you're going to. So long answer for a short question, but yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
Well, before we lose more people, let me go ahead and run the poll question to vote on our topic for our April session. So if you happen to be in a full screen, you might need to minimize to respond. So our question is, what would you like to review? Would you like to see Monarch Server, Report Warehouse, have an overview of Report Warehouse? Would you like to review over the DPS summary enhancements? Would you like to see a session where we work with Excel files? And there's the other. And so with the other, in our closing, when we close out the webinar, please, if you can submit your feedback on the session, there is a column for additional comments, feedback. That's where you can enter that question, and we would add that topic to be voted for the following session. So we'll do a quick countdown because it looks most have voted. So we'll do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so our popular topic is working with Excel. All right. Let me go ahead and take the slides back. Try to see which screen is sharing.
Your resources.
Oh, great.
PowerPoint.
Great. So again, that PowerPoint, if you did not have an opportunity to download, please do so. You could see the different links. Again, right on that community page, if you ever need to contact support, you got create a case, contact support. So those feature requests, please go ahead and submit those in. The Monarch Forum, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. This will give you updates to when colleagues post discussion blogs, upcoming webinars, releases, etc. Documentation, if you have not been there, the help guide is just a great resource, kind of cover some of those topics. The Altair Exchange is also known as the Monarch Model Library, and in that Monarch Forum, I haven't updated, but there is a direct link to the listing of those models. We're up to 2,600, I want to say. Learning Center, we do have e-learning modules that you can participate. You come to the Learn menu and look for Explore Courses. This year is actually the live course. Currently, 2024, we're not doing hosting the live sessions. We only had like 2 to 3 last year. So didn't want to have more use of Chris and Mo and Steve's time. So right now we're taking a little break, but we do have the e-learning modules that you can search for. We actually do have a certification course that you could take. It's 40 questions where you can earn yourself a LinkedIn badge to be Monarch certified. Marketplace, that's where you'll find the latest downloads. So again, we're now at version, this is old, this is 2022, but we are at version 2023.2. I believe it's been rumored that 2024 will come out in May, June timeframe. And if the organization has not taken advantage of a complimentary onboarding, we review trapping the basics of Monarch. You can schedule that with the customer success team. And our next Ask the Expert will be April 9th. The schedule is not out yet, so my goal is to have that registration page updated by March 28th, where you can register for our Q2 sessions. That's all I have. So I know we have 5 minutes, so we'll give those back to everybody. So again, thank you so much for attending. Don't hesitate to reach out to support or the customer success team. Have a great day. Chris, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.